No, yes.
He's coming up here. Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the show here. We're doing a live stream on YouTube and we're doing a simulcast on X Spaces. It's going to take a little while for people to get logged in here, but I'll also set up when you start talking. I'll also set up the live stream on my website. But John, thank you for coming onto the show. I want to remind the audience in the description box of this video and all my videos with John, please click the link and that will take you to his website. I'll put in the chat box the links also and remind the audience to go to his website, sign up for the periodical and the readings, and we'll discuss within the show what that exactly is, what the reading consists of. But welcome back to the show, John.
I'm glad to be back.
So before we start with what happened with my father, some of the people that know that he passed away on Thursday. But before, I'd like to do some admin stuff behind the scenes before we start that. Get to that. So you were saying that you were doing a show with. Can you talk about doing a show with Shatner at all?
Well, no, well, first, yeah, I can't really talk about it, but all I can say is, I think I can say that, yeah, we went to Boulder and shot it. Actually, I was filming on that day, um, in Boulder, when your father passed, and I've been on the Unexplained before, and as people might know, it's the host is William Shatner, who's I think in his mid 90s now, and he's still going strong. So everybody kind of goes, "Oh wow, what did he say? What did he do?" And I said, "Well, how it works in the Unexplained at many shows is you film the show." And all the guests are filmed, and then that's all put together, and then Bill or Leonard Nimoy. I used to do a bunch of Secrets and Mysteries in the 90s, so I also had him as my host. But we never meet because the hosts usually come into the studio and just do their spot lines, and that's it. But it's going to be coming out. I don't know when, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be coming out either in late summer or fall. But it was a really good interview.
That's pretty cool, actually. One of the things that I remember as a kid, young, was the reruns in the 70s of Star Trek.
Ah,
And because they originally recorded them in the 60s, and then
yeah.
and I think we're 80 episodes or something like that.
There were, I think, 72.
72. Okay.
So they
So,
just made it to not be, they made it for reruns with that because
right.
of the third season. Well, this kind of prompts my other experience with Star Trek actors, which were direct. I was So you get a little preview because I'm going to write about it in my next April Hogue Prophecy report. It just has a little life relief given all the events that are going on. Um, Star Trek: The Motion Picture had come out in 1979, and it was interesting to see that it really had just freshly come out, so not a lot of people were coming to meet the stars or doing the big Comic Cons and stuff like that. So I went to Hollywood Boulevard with this little venue. There was only about 20 fans sitting with uh, Sulu Takei,
Yeah.
uh, Persis Kambata, the Indian actress who played the bald Delton Ilea,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then there was Bones McCoy, and there was also Scotty.
Scotty was
So,
one.
so those four people, it's literally like a very intimate conversation because there were only 20 of us and then them, and it was a remarkable experience. Um, the so it just so happened that as it all broke up, and we were talking to everybody, and as it all broke up, DeForest Kelly, who plays Bones McCoy, was going the same direction down Hollywood Boulevard as I was, and it, he's one of those kind of people. I'm kind of this way as with my celebrity. I just talk to people like normal, and he was just very open and not reserved. Oh, I'm too important to talk to this person, and he was just a wonderful Southern gentleman. And so we're walking down, and then I said, DeForest, I have an idea that I know which favorite episode is yours as well as mine from the first season of Star Trek. And so the first season of all of this. And here's how I'm going to prompt it. I said, uh, because you had such wonderful lines in it, like when you suddenly appeared from an interdimensional weirdness into early 1930s Depression America,
Yeah.
saying, "Murders, assassins, you, what planet is this?" He almost fell over laughing. And he then talked about the great scene in the motion Star Trek the Motion Picture after Spock had gone to mind meld with V'ger, and um and how Kirk brought him back when the aperture opened of V'ger, and then the next shot is in the medical room, and he's talking to Bones. Says, "Will he recover?" Kirk and Bones are talking. How is his brain? Well, he's had a real shock, and then suddenly you hear this laughter off camera. It's Spock, and he's laughing, and they come to him. He says, "Spock," says Shatner, "Spock, what happened?" And Spock talks about, well, I V'ger, some of the fragments of his V'ger has in him the length and breadth of the knowledge of the universe. He's been traveling, they're made of this planet full of intelligent, conscious machines. Unbelievable technology, he said. And he said, but Jim, um, V'ger's. He then said they know everything, but he is searching for something that he can't tell it. He doesn't know what it is, and then um, um, William Shatner, Captain Kirk leans in. What is it, Spock? And then Spock grabs his forearm. This simple feeling. Completely he cannot understand. And then Kirk smiles. It's because it's not unspoken, but it's beautiful about love, about friendship. And and then Spock says, and V'ger's looking for what? Said Kirk. Is this all? He's asking. Actually, is the line. Is this all that I am? Is there nothing more? And I was a year away from going to India and completely having a new life, going to my master Osho for the first time. And the if you've ever seen the transformation scene of it, when Persis Kambata and her former lover, who's the captain of, I guess Kirk is the admiral on board, and they interface with each other and V'ger, and they ended up going into a completely interdimensional birth. And it was such a profound experience to see it. I just watched it again not long before, and it kind of ties into the other themes of this that we're about to talk. This whole transformation. And you remember there's this huge orgasmic explosion of light, and the music's very, very impressionistic, going la da boom boom la da, and then you hear this boom, and out of the beautiful lights of the transition comes the Enterprise coming right at you slowly. And um it was movies have always been a really deep jump for me for for my spiritual life. Arts have always been a real eye opener, an inner eye, the third eye opener for me. And so I was talking to DeForest Kelly about that scene, and he said, and then he told me about some extra part of the scene that was cut out, that he had these nice lines. And if you see the director's cut, that scene has been restored. He says, aren't we all in some way kind of just machines? You know, and anyway, I'm not telling it's so great today, but it's go see it. It's really wonderful. I think yeah, so death and transcendence kind of. Anyway, I said my goodbyes to DeForest Kelly, and I went on, and so I'm going to write a story about my talk, my conversation with DeForest Kelly. So that's just a little intro to it.
Okay, so I had to reset the spaces. For some reason, it wasn't connecting. So now the spaces are working here. But we do
Mercury's
have
in
people.
retrograde, by the way.
I'll tell you, talking about retrograde.
I mean,
We do,
I haven't, I hadn't, I was so retrograde that I wasn't even aware that we were in retrograde until we entered the second week.
so so yeah, I was telling you, John, that my father passed away on Thursday. So I just want to kind of give you the sequence of events because I think maybe we can learn something from it. Maybe we can get a conversation going with the audience here, and the ones that are going to be listening on Spaces. So we're live streaming on YouTube. We're live streaming on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and also doing the simulcast on X Spaces. So if you do have a question, please type it into the chat box. I'm watching the chat box, and if you're on X Spaces, just ask for the mic and you can ask your question. But let's transition into what happened during the week here. So as you know, my father had ischemic dementia. He's been suffering from dementia for a while. So this goes all the way back to 20. Well, let's go where we first noticed that he started having problems. It was around 2018. He used to write a lot, and it was very detailed. The emails that he would write would be paragraphs. Many people that write an email is very short, right? But he would write paragraphs, very fluent. When he called on the phone, very fluent. But around sometime in around 2018, his sentence structure was starting to be shorter. The vocab was shorter. He would stutter on the phone. I noticed that he was having problems finding words. All right, so this is happening all pre-COVID. This is 2018. And we thought it was the beginnings of Alzheimer's. Now, there's different types of dementia, right? There's dementia is just a broad category of many different types. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So fast forward to 2021. Between 2018 to 2021, it's getting worse, but you can still talk to him. He still understands. He still recognizes. He's still driving. He used to be at a because he was already retired. He used to work for free at a history museum. He was really into the Civil War and Lincoln, and he was the museum expert on Lincoln. So and he was even thinking about writing a book about Reconstructionism. He felt that area post Civil War was lacking in the scholarly research.
True.
All right, so he was getting worse. 2020 and 2021. the sentence structure was starting to really weaken precipitously. And he was stuttering quite a bit on the phone. Now, I'm doing my research on the TAP protein. All right. This is HIV TAP protein research. And I was out of the country when he crashed. And to give you a little bit more backstory on this, he was the caregiver of my mother. So my mother was very ill for many years. She had diabetes. She had 4 or 5 different heart attacks, and we really thought my father was going to be a centurion. I mean, most of the people in his family lived to their 90s or older. So he was a very healthy individual, except that this beginning problem that starts in 2018. So we thought that my mother would go before my father, all right, and that he was the caregiver. But he crashes in 2021. All right, this is around June or July. I think it was July of 2021. And when you have dementia, and in his case, it was ischemic dementia, you stop wanting to eat or your fluid levels go down. And what happens is that you have such a high level of sodium that can affect the heart. You have a very low blood volume, so the blood pressure goes down and your kidneys start to shut down and you can die. All right. So my brother was just happened to be visiting in the area. He showed up and he's just not very responsive. And my mom was saying, yeah, he's sleeping a lot. And it was like, there was, so my brother decided to call the ambulance and he was placed in this is all happening in 2021. So he was in the hospital for about 13 days. They stabilized him in the ER and then transferred him to ICU. He almost died. So my brother and I had the decision, should we put a feeding tube in or not? If we didn't, he would have died within about 48 hours. So we made the decision, not knowing where his cognitive baseline was. And he recovered, at least in body, but not in mind. So he couldn't speak. At that time, we didn't know if he had a stroke, because in the early stages of this, we thought maybe he had a stroke because he wasn't speaking. But it really was, after further testing, it came out that it was ischemic dementia. So basically what that means is that there's a constriction of blood flow to the brain chronically that leads to the hippocampal death over time. And that's what we were seeing that starting to happen in 2018. So it wasn't Alzheimer's, it was ischemic dementia. But so there was this, we were at one fork in the road. This is an important point that will resurface in 2025. So we're in this fork in the road and what to do. Should we put the feeding tube in or not? So we decided to do it. He is stabilized and we transfer him to a nursing home. Meanwhile, he was the caregiver of my mother and she couldn't walk. She had diabetes. She was in very poor health. So we actually had to transfer my mother at the same time because she kept on falling. She had very weak legs and had a hard time moving around in the home. So she had to be transferred to a nursing home too. So this is all happening at the same time with my parents. So most parents don't crash at the same time, right? So my mother starts to decline rapidly in the nursing home. So she's transferred in August and she dies in January of 2022. So, and that was during the Omicron wave that happened, large Omicron wave. She contracted SARS-CoV-2 in the nursing home, but she had such poor health. Yeah. She had COPD, she had a weak heart, and fluid built up in her lung, and then it was too stressful for her heart. She had a cardiac arrest. So if we didn't do heroic measures in 2021 for my father, they would have passed within 12 months of each other, right? Less than 12 months, right? 6 months, really. And usually husband and wife, they usually go around the same time, about a year or so, especially if they're in poor health. So, so she dies in 2022 in January, and he's hanging on in the nursing home, through all the way up, to 2025. Okay, so now he's declining and he doesn't recognize us. He didn't know that my mother passed away or anything. I mean, there's nothing there. I mean, he responded to music, which was strange. My brother would go and visit him and play Mozart. He seemed to respond to music, but not to anything else. And his attention span was like a dog or a little kid, very, very short attention span, food motivated. And somehow he was responding to music. Now, why that is, I'm not sure. So I'm doing a live show in the morning, going over the news, and my brother sends a text message saying, "I'm at the hospital." He called, and I didn't pick it up because I was on the show, and I saw this text message saying he was at the hospital. So I automatically assumed it was my brother that had like a heart attack or something, because his heart is kind of weak. So, so I quickly end the show abruptly, call my brother, assuming that he's in the hospital. Well, he was in the hospital for my father, because my father crashed in the nursing home. So what happened is that he's been in hospice for he was in hospice for about 3 or 4 weeks. And in hospice, what happens is that they slowly reduce their food intake and their fluid intake. And he got to the late stages of his, dementia, right? So his body started to shut down. What pushed him over the edge was, in nursing homes, it's very easy, especially these dementia patients, to get pneumonia. So he had a left lower lung pneumonia, most likely from food particles. When they're eating, they're breathing in. When people don't have good brain function, you can easily get food particles down your trachea and create a pneumonia. Right? This is not uncommon in nursing homes, especially near the late stage of this. So the staff in the ER is like, "Do you want to resuscitate or not?" And my brother is very religious, and so it was, okay, use heroic measures at this point in time to figure out what's going on. So they intubate, and we thought he was going to die in the ER. So this is around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock on Thursday p.m. And so, I'm getting ready to like fly out to Michigan, and, in matter of hours, he was going to die, we thought. So they stabilize him over some time. And to stabilize patients that have a very low blood volume, high sodium content, it's a hypernatremia. They give fluids, but slowly. And because he had such low blood pressure and very low pulse ox, I mean, he had a pulse ox of 60. He had a blood pressure of 50 over 30. I mean, he was about ready to die. So what they do is they pump him up with a bunch of vasopressors to get that blood pressure up and try to stabilize him. So they were able to stabilize him. And he's 81. This year he would have been 82. So they stabilized him in the ER, and they said to my brother, okay, all right, we're going to transfer him to the to the ICU, and we'll give you an update. So my brother went back home, and then while they were doing the transferring, this was during the change of shifts, and notoriously, when there's a shift change and a patient change to one department to another, they screw stuff up. So for whatever reason, his blood pressure crashed again because of the vasopressors or right concentration or whatever. So they thought he was on the verge, imminent death. So my brother rushes back, right? And he calls me, and we're like figuring out what should we do. So the first doc, the ER doc, thought that it was the late stage dementia that was the catalyst of him in the situation that he's in, because he was in hospice. And so we created this whole decision matrix, my brother and I, of what we should do. Okay, if it's the late stage dementia, let's have a natural death for my father and not do heroics. But if it's some sort of infection and it's not the late stage dementia, clear the infection with broad spectrum antibiotics and see if he recovers. That was the decision matrix that we had. And that was based on the ER doc on what his assessment was. So when it was transferred to the ICU doc, who had a little bit more experience, he said that it's what pushed him over was really the pneumonia, not the late stage dementia in the hospice care. So because my brother is religious, now this is starting to turn into a Seinfeld episode. So now he's like, now he's thinking maybe we should do heroics because it's an infection and it's not really the late stage of the dementia based on the ICU doc. But the ICU doc said, yeah, we could stabilize him, but he'll be back here in days or a week with the same problem. It's just going to be, this thing, he's not going to recover. They can clear the infection, but he's going to be back in. So I didn't realize how much he declined in hospice care. It's shocking. It was, just in 3 weeks, it was radically different. Okay, so I'm having this long discussion with my brother, and the doctor says, okay, let's continue on with the broad spectrum and the vasopressors and see where we're at. Okay, so now it's getting close to about 8 or 9 o'clock. All right. And we're trying to make a decision what we need to do. So my brother is starting to, get in a situation where he needs to call a rabbi and call, the funeral home and the cemetery and all this. And he starts to stabilize. All right. And so there's this kind of like almost just a glimmer of hope that maybe we shouldn't pull the plug yet. So now it turns to about 12 o'clock. So it's now it's midnight, right? And he is stabilized, but it's very hard to keep his blood pressure. They have to keep on pumping him up with these vasopressors. Okay. So my sister, who's in Texas, she gets on a conference call. I'm in New York. I'm on a conference call with my brother and with the ICU doc. And, we're going through this whole decision matrix of, should we pull the plug? Should we not? And my brother doesn't have any medical training. I have medical training. My sister has medical training. And my sister's very pushy individual, very pushy individual. And she was like almost pimping, it was pimping the doctor. Did you do this? Did you do that? What kind of medication did da, 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 da. She does transplants. All right. She's a surgical tech for transplants in Texas. So the problem with, for people that don't know, if you have very low blood pressure and it has been sustained for quite a while, many organ systems are going to be damaged. And this is the problem that, yeah, you can do heroics, maybe stabilize the patient. They go back into the nursing home or in hospice care, but they're coming back because they have organ damage from the low perfusion of because of the low blood pressure. So we eventually, going around our, pluses and minuses, should we stop this or not? We eventually, all three of us, make the decision that the best thing for dad is to stop the suffering and just to stop the medication and let him drift off. So we all agree. So now this is like 12:15, 12:20. All right. And my brother's in the ICU. So he's getting ready to make the, pull the plug actually. All right. So he takes about 10, 20 minutes to get, just to get in the right state of mind. And what happens is that whoever's there, you have a bunch of staff that comes into the ICU room and with the doctor and the nurses, and the individual that's making the call, they'll ask, what do you want to do? And then my brother said, okay, we want you to stop doing the heroics, pull him off the medication and let him, drift off as peacefully as possible for him to die. So they do that, right? So what happens is in that ICU unit, usually you have all this telemetry, like blood pressure, heart rate, all the screens. Well, they turn all that off. All right. And so you have these medication drips that will beep in the room. They're very eerie. We were talking about Star Trek earlier. There's these beeps. It sounds like this in the room. Beep, 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 beep. And then it's silent. And then beep. It's like a random beep. All right. But my brother, in the background, you can also hear some of the other rooms doing the same thing. So it's like a corridor of death, in the ICU unit. I mean, this doc's probably, you're probably seeing 3 or 4 of these a night. So, okay. So I'm talking to my brother after I got off the phone, and he's doing all this with the staff to get everything ready. So I called back at about, I don't know, 12:45 or so, 12:50. And, I said, what's going on? But there was one part that I forgot to mention. So let me go back. Every time when you tell a story, you miss a little piece. So when we were making the decision at 12:15 to pull the plug, we asked the doctor, how long does he have? And he said that if we pull the vasopressors, we think that he'll die in minutes to within an hour. And that was a major determining factor on what to do. All right. Okay. So keep that in mind. Okay. Now, my father has a lot of fortitude, right? So, okay. So, all right, it's 12:45. All right. And I called Joel and I'm like going, is he gone yet? And he's going, no, they just started it. Okay. So I'm talking to my brother. I wanted to be on the phone with my brother. He's sitting in the chair next to my father thinking this is going to take until 1 o'clock. All right. 1 o'clock passes. No change. 1:15, no change. 1:30, no change. The doctor comes in to give an update with my brother. He says, I can't believe the guy's still alive. And it's like, so, he's almost fully off of the medication, but he's still, he's asleep, but he's still alive. So I'm on the phone this whole time. It's going 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. I get off the phone at around 3:15, 3:20, maybe it was 3:30, probably just before 3:30. I'm getting tired, it's AM. And you know, we were thinking it would be kind of imminent, but he lasted until 4:57. He passes away. And so he lasted a lot longer than we expected, a lot longer than we expected. But I think that we made the right decision going back to that first fork in the road that we had in 2021 when we did with the feeding tube. You know, I've always kind of reran that situation. Did we do the right thing? You know, maybe we shouldn't have had the feeding tube back in 2021 and he wouldn't have had to suffer and he would have passed away in the hospital. And then, you know, because we did these heroics, you know, he suffered in the nursing home from 2021 all the way, you know, to just recently in 2025. But he held on for a long time. So it gets even crazier. All right. So that sounds like a Seinfeld episode. So, so in the Jewish tradition, you're supposed to bury the dead within a 24-hour period. All right. So he's passed away at 4:57. You have to give about a 24-hour notice to the cemetery to be able to dig the grave, and there's a union involved, and you know all this stuff. All right. So my brother schedules it 11 a.m. Friday. So I fly out. All right. Fly that day, that night. I only had like an hour and a half of sleep. You know, I was just thinking about my dad, you know, the whole time. So I fly to Detroit and land at about 8 o'clock. So 8 a.m. I drive out to my brother's and then we go from my brother's to the cemetery. He doesn't live that far away from the cemetery. And that was the first time, John, that I went through those gates. The last time I went through those gates at the cemetery was when I buried my brother in 2010.
Right.
All right. And it was just kind of like, just eerie. It was just so like, just, you know, when I buried my brother, it was in the summer. It was July. So it's nice and warm, and it was just you know, the trees were, you know, they had the leaves, and it just, this go around, it was cold. It was like, there was a different feel to it. Right. And, you know, there was a kind of there's a shock, you know, seeing the headstone for my brother and seeing the headstone for my mother. And, you know, and it just, there's a jarring effect to it. So, so here comes the Seinfeld episode. So my mother is buried right next to my father. All right. So the two plots. And then my brother is not in the same row. He's one row ahead of them, but in front of my mother. So my mother is like this, my father is like this, and then my brother is like over here. All right. So it's not in the same row as my parents. It's one, but it's in line with my mother. So so there's this cart that has it's a Ford tractor. It's an old Ford tractor with this, you know, bay that's in the back that can tilt with a bunch of dirt, right? So in the Jewish tradition, we fill the grave with shovel by hand. So I filled my father's grave with my brother the whole way, the whole thing. Yeah. So I'm a little sore from that. But the thing is the tractor, they put boards down and they dump dirt, and then you shovel the dirt into the grave. Yeah. Literally, the tractor was on my mother's grave with the dirt. It was so weird. It's as if she was part of the burial with my father. Yeah. So we're fast. Let me go back one step. So before we lower the casket into the ground, you know, we say eulogies. You know, we have our speeches. My sister started, or first the rabbi says something, then my sister, and then my brother, and then because I'm the oldest, it's been our tradition that when we bury our family members, that I say the last words, and then the casket is lowered. So so we're lowering the casket, and then we start to, shovel. It's very cold, very cold. And the rabbi was getting a little, because some Jewish families, they won't fill. See, at least in Michigan, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but at least in Michigan, there's a concrete wall that's put down into, like a box that's put into the grave. So they dig the grave and they put a concrete box. But for Jewish families, or Jewish dead, they have a hole that's on the bottom of this concrete box that they put in. And the idea is that the dead are put in a wooden box, it decays and it goes into the ground. There's nothing impeding them to getting into the earth. If you're in a concrete box, you're impeding that getting dust to dust concept, right? So, but the thing is, Jewish individuals don't get embalmed. There's no formaldehyde. So that's part of the reason why you can do it this way. All right. But then they also put a concrete top to it. Now, some Jewish families, I would say more than half, what they'll do is that they'll put the concrete, they'll put the box in, they'll put the lid on, and then put the dirt on that. And there's no dirt inside the concrete box, even though there is a hole at the bottom. What we do is that we put the dirt in the concrete, that the casket's laid in, and then that perimeter and on the top of the casket, you put the dirt in the concrete box and around the perimeter. It's you fill it all the way to the top. Then you bring down the concrete top and then fill again. So it takes a lot of time to do this, and it's cold. And the rabbi that, because my father wasn't Orthodox, he was more of a conservative persuasion in terms of his religious observance. So we decided just to get a conservative rabbi, even though my brother's Orthodox, and we decided to kind of blend the two. It was like a conservative burial, but with an Orthodox bent to it. All right. So you could tell that the rabbi was getting upset, that we were taking so long because it was so cold out. And
give him a shovel.
It got to that point. there were literally 4 people doing it. Most of the shoveling was myself and my brother. But you're shoveling that whole time. Your heart rate's up, and you get out of breath. And so my brother's rabbi and the officiating rabbi was there. All right. And they helped a little bit, like 3 shovels, or maybe 4 shovels, and then they stop.
Oh, for more shovels.
Yeah. So there were only 2 shovels. And so the rabbi wanted to just dump the dirt onto the grave, which is like a major no-no, So we were like, nope, that's not going to happen. So we just did it, and it took time. And then, we did it the right way. And then we said the prayers at the grave, and, and that was it. But, so as we were doing the shoveling, at times they had to tip the back, so we would bring the dirt down onto the boards that were on my mother. Right? So as the tractor was moving backward, it moved the plywood over the grave, over my father's grave. So it was overhanging. So we had some problem being able to get the dirt under the overhang. So they had to pull back out eventually we get the dirt off. We put as much as we could in. The tractor, the Ford tractor moves forward, and then we lift the board up, and we're finishing up filling the grave, right? And so my sister goes, Paul, you're stepping on your mother, because I had to step on my mother to get to the dirt to be able to. So I go, I know I'm stepping on my mother. But it's just it was kind of comical in a way, that, right, right. I just, so, but that was the journey. That was the journey of this. And, I still feel like I mentioned earlier today to people, and I even said this during the funeral. I feel this is the first time where the parents are gone. When you're the firstborn, there's never been a time that I didn't know my parents, weren't around. There were at least one parent around. So this is the first time where both parents, even though my father mentally was gone in 2021, this is the first time that both parents are physically not in existence on how we define existence, but so it's a weird feeling where I kind of lost my foundation in a way, or I also use the term I felt lost with the passing of the parents. And what do we do? What I mean, I know intellectually this will pass, and this is, the grieving process will make it easier and all that. But it's just it's a weird place to be in.
Yes.
So that was the journey. But he held on. He just held on, and talking to my brother on the phone, when he was sitting in the ICU waiting for my father to pass, which should have been in minutes or an hour at least, and it took a lot longer. And just hearing those beeps in the background, these random beeps from those machines, it was very eerie. Late at night, I think that it would probably be a different feeling if it was during the day, but this was late at night, and that's where it kind of like death hovers in ICU is at night. So that's that's what happened.
Wow.
So it was a journey. It was a big journey, from a long journey for my father, and we made a decision in 2021 for the feeding tube. I really wish we didn't do that. But here's the other part of the story. Because of how religious my brother is, he would keep on doing the heroics in that case. So it was like this. It was meant to give suffering to my father in a strange way, but I do regret that in 2021, that path that we took. I think that was the time where he should have gone, and he would have gone with my mother in around the same time period.
Well, it happened. I was a caregiver to my mother for many years. She had Parkinson's and a bit of Parkinson's dementia as well. Although in her case, maybe because she was a meditator, uh, she was conscious throughout most of it, even when the brain was doing funny things. Like she would say, she'd come out of the room in 2014 and says, I've just I've just taken my pills 5 times. And because, in Parkinson's, sometimes the sequence of memories go, and it really feels like she's taken them 5 times. And of course, the pills were not 5 times, but the one time she took it, her brain relived it. And of course, yeah, the doctor, the Parkinson's person we had was, I won't mention his name, of course, but he really felt like he was just ready for his retirement and didn't care. And he never told me about the the hallucinations that happen. Um, and then his way of talking about was just say, well, it's just the way it is. Uh, and I almost wanted to say, that you're a mediocrity? Yes. I just gave him a look, but I just left it at that. Go shuffle off and retire. But um, I was very, very close to my mother. We were like a soulmate. It was like we were one person in two bodies. It was very, very close. And so I can appreciate your feeling about how you've always had your mother and father there. Although I was the second child, I could simply say the same, is that my memory in my life was that she was always there, and we were so close. So close that we even shared the same spiritual path. I went off to India, and then she went off and also became a disciple on her own, and so we shared that spiritual side of it as well. But I remember, I mean, there were many amazing things that happened when she died. Now, I can talk about that at another time, but to the point of what you're feeling about, feeling like in the lurch, the absence of your father, is it now both your parents are gone. Now, my father died in 1997. Um, um, I was able to say goodbye. It kind of came an unusual way. He was down in California, and I, I ended up my brother's van. He was in the front seat. My father's. I wrapped myself in his lap. I got up into his lap and wrapped myself around him, with my mouth next to his ear, and I said, "I love you, Dad." And he said, "I love you, son." And then I just, as the things I do, this medium thing, I just said goodbye. I wasn't even thinking. I just watched myself say goodbye. And his body kind of gripped just slightly and then relaxed. And he said, goodbye, son. And then a few months later, he was gone. So, but with the mother, it was much bigger. And when she had passed, it was amazing. One of the most miraculous, many things happened, quite miraculous about it that I never anticipated. But I did feel for a few months after it was all done, after I'd pushed the button on her cremation, all of that, something remarkable happened while that was happening. But that's for another day. Um, but for a long time, I felt like a stranger in a strange land. I felt like the world I felt the void of their absence, and it just put me into a space of just observing aloneness for the first time in its kind of empty space. But I will say this, that because death is one of the most important things that life hands us. Um, it's at least this is how I learned with my teacher, my master Osho, about this. And I was also there for his death in 1990 in January. Um, we, I was there to see his burning in the same burning ghat where 10 years earlier I was going there every day to watch people burn, doing the Tantra meditation. I wasn't told to do it. I think it's from past lives or something. I just started sitting with the dead, watching the stages of them burning, and then meditating upon the skull and looking at the eye socket for 3 hours. And then the third day at evening, um, just looking at the empty pit as if they never existed. It's that mystery of death. It's like when people go, it's like, did we ever exist? Is this going to happen to me as well? Is it just go? And of course, the other issues that come up is because who knows, maybe I also will go demented sometime, and all I can think of is that uh, maybe there's something that will be witnessing it. And that's going to be the experiment, the exploration. When the mind starts going, maybe I've gone deep enough into meditation that I will, that the meditation, that it seems incapable of anything of the phenomenal world to harm it or touch it. But we'll see. Um, I mean, and so, yeah, well, of course, it's the mystery when dementia happens. What is somebody really suffering? That's the other question. We haven't. It would be interesting if we could somehow discover if the person is in there, because I'll tell you a story about somebody on the Oregon Commune Ranch. There was a mother who was one of the disciples, and she was also a disciple. Her name was Joyce, and something happened to Joyce, and she just everybody, we all thought that she had some kind of stroke and just was kind of out of it. So she could still walk and eat and do, but she needed somebody to assist her and all. I noticed around the commune, everybody was just kind of looking at like what people would laugh at somebody. And Joyce during discourses when Osho was just we'd come in just maybe 10 people at a time when he just started discoursing again in 1984. I mean, eventually it was a whole thousands of people, but and some people had told me that Joyce was always there. Osho wanted her to be there every discourse, and that it would happen sometimes that Joyce would just fall off her chair and you hear a thump. She'd be okay, but and then some people were joking about it, but the general feeling was that people thought, well, she's just gaga. But I had this experience, unexpected experience, where she looked at me and I looked at her, and then I realized she was in there, totally in there. And she couldn't speak or communicate, but she knew that I knew. And, it was just that, my God, Joyce got enlightened and it busted her brain. But she blew a gasket when she got enlightened. There was an enlightened being in that body. And so it was it was quite an epiphany to see it, because it just was there. I went, my God, Joyce is there. She just can't come out and talk or anything like that, and that's why she's kind of looking around at everybody like this. And then what happened years after the ranch folded and the commune was destroyed by the U.S. government? The I heard from her from her daughter, who well, anyway, she said that she was in a home in Britain. She was English, and then one day she got up out of the bed and spoke. Hadn't spoken for years. Says, "I want to go home and sleep in my bed now." And they went, summoned her daughter and everything, and well, okay, they took her home, and she got into the bed and smiled and folded her arms and left her body. So it's hard to know um, what if to what extent it's time to let go and time to pull the plug.
When we were in that decision matrix, John, I don't, maybe you know this already, but in Judaism, typically there are three times of prayer, morning, afternoon, evening, but then there's a midnight prayer that is actually goes all the way back to like King David or something like that. And so it was almost as if, and I was telling this to my brother the next day, or that later that morning, I should say. It was the same morning, but it's just later in that morning. But it was as if there was like three angels, all right, during the midnight prayer. And we're talking to the executor, which is the doctor, all right? And the three angels, myself, my brother, and my sister, and we're all debating about should he live another day or not. And we're going through this decision matrix. Should he suffer? Should he not? Is it is it late stage dementia? Should we try to fight the pneumonia with, and so there was, big discussion about this. It wasn't like a fight or anything. It was just like, what's the best thing for dad? And 2/3 of the angels have medical, background. So, it's a little hairy there. But the thing is that, um, I felt as though there was like kind of a meditation or a prayer, or through this discussion, there's this is what happens in this is what happens in heaven, or whatever word you want to use, when certain thing when there's an execute when there's an when there's an execution, or of an edict to happen. There are angels, or there are a group of individuals, spiritual entities, that are debating, and they're debating about the if one path should happen or another path should happen. That was the feeling that I had with this whole midnight discussion that's going on about, should we pull the plug on my father or not? And the executor is then, the staff, the doctor and the nurses, doing pulling pulling the medication, the vasopressors on my dad. So, but yeah, it was really weird. It felt almost spiritual what was going on. It's so late at night. Now, when you are stressed, emotionally stressed in that late at night, there is kind of like almost like this, you don't feel like yourself,
Mm.
it's almost like, in a way, what happened was kind of spiritual. In a way, you're tired, so that kind of brings down your consciousness a little bit. Or maybe opens it up. Let's say that, it opens it up. But there's this debate that's going on with the kids,
Yeah.
to let the father go or not. And it's such a late hour, that midnight hour. It's just very eerie. you
It
know.
is. It's also
And
in.
it was through this conference call, through the iPhone. It was this, the FaceTime audio, and so it's through airways. It was through it was through space, and there was this communication from three different areas of the country: Michigan, New York, Texas. Right? It's just a very, I don't know. I felt that there was a spiritual element with that whole making this decision in that midnight hour.
Death is an opportunity. Death is the climax to life. Death, when I wanted to kill myself in 1981 after coming back from India as a new minted Swami, and I realized I really couldn't fit in the world. And I think I talked about this earlier about how um, when I decided I was going to walk off the cliff, I stopped because I was really going to do it. The situation had come. I had this experience of death and life meeting in such an incredibly intimate way that it was like the coitus of life and death, to use a tantric term. And it was so mysterious. It's so reckoning and let going at the same time that I sat uh, next to against this little young gum tree, silver dollar gum tree, and just wanted to ponder it because I knew that if I did not go over the cliff, this thing would disappear. This presence of life meeting death, because I was about to die, and from my own choice. And so I sat there, and then what happened was there was this electric shock that came from the roots after a few minutes, and threw me forward into the crabgrass. And then I cried myself dry, literally cried myself dry, gullet. And then I heard this, and it was I looked over my shoulder, and there was the little silver dollar tree going, tss, and the sky was full of incredible cirrus clouds dancing silently, guided by the music of silence. And over across the Santa Catalina Strait to San Pedro, California, I saw Santa Catalina Island trying on a new dress of mists. And the whole thing was that the unlovingness that I felt of being back in the world was gone. And what I was missing was how incredibly existence loves all of us. The divine loves all of us. The divine has created each of us equally unique. Never will come again, this uniqueness. And that's also what we face in life. Maybe we don't have words for it, but it's like never again will such expressions of the eternity come again in those forms. But the eternity that sparks in me sparks in you, sparks in everyone. The source of the divine is undying. It's never been born. It never, therefore, it never will die. And that divine, that call it God, call it source, call it Yahweh, call it Brahma. These are just the names that are part of our transitory appearance, this great creation that existence is the divine's great play. And so, it's all of these. So there's always an opening. There's always an opportunity for those who were birthed by our parents to experience that, or losing anyone we know, is to experience that uh, in little drabs or in a big shock, like it happened to me, this meeting of life and death.
But when I was burying my brother, so back in 2010, that felt like a bomb, like a nuclear bomb went off. I mean, I the grief and the suddenness of it, of a younger brother dying from a heart attack.
Mm.
Now, that was like one side of the spectrum, sudden and just pure shock, right? Now with my mother, she was in ill health. She was in the nursing home. I think she was transferred in August, and then she dies in January, right? So it was relatively fast compared to what happened with my father, and it was expected because of her ill health. What was shocking about it is that what kicked her, her nickname was within the family members was Darth Vader, because she had the COPD, and she she couldn't breathe very well, and she we always, and she just wouldn't die. I mean, she had this COPD thing going all the way back to like 2000. All right, so she had COPD for quite a while. So
Uh,
I mean, she literally was like Darth Vader. You just couldn't kill her.
Luke.
So so I just like, so she's just like, but we knew because of her ill health and the rapid decline that she had in the nursing home, that she was going to die probably within 4 months if she didn't contract COVID, right? But it was still shocking. And the part that was shocking about it is, one, it's a parent that dies,
Mm.
but not just that, how horrific the death was because of the COVID problem with it. So it was just ghastly, but just, with what I still have like nightmares of what it looked like. Right. All right. So because of that, I kind of just want to be in a peaceful kind of environment. I don't want to see death. I don't want to see people sick. I just want to be in a peaceful environment. I know that sounds like running away from something, but I just don't want to see death anymore. All right, so she's like in the middle where you kind of expect it, but it's still kind of bad, right? And then I'm like, on the other side of the spectrum is my father, where he is in a nursing home from 2021 to 2025, and his brain's gone, or what we think is gone, right? And he's just not responding to stimuli other than food and music. But he he drifted away because the way the medication is near the end, they put them to sleep basically, and you're basically, what happens is your heart gives out because of the lack of blood pressure. So you go into cardiac arrest, but you don't do chest compressions, but they're asleep, so they're literally snoring themselves. Like, literally, he snored himself to death. That's what happened with my father. So he literally snored himself to death. But so it wasn't fast like my right, and it was expected because we pulled the plug, right? So it was kind of it was like a drift away, a slow drift away. Now it was a lot longer of a drift than we expected. We thought it was going to be minutes to an hour, not 4 hours long or whatever. But the thing is that you had these three different types. I would say the most shocking, the most like catastrophic was what happened with my brother. With my father, it was a different feeling. So a lot. All three of these were like they had this little different component to it. It's on a spectrum of like how death happens. So
I I am being overcome with a question, and I would you like me to draw some cards about this situation?
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, let's try it.
Okay.
This is total for the
This
ones
is
that are
unusual,
listening.
but I've
Yeah,
never
for
had
the
this
ones
come
that are
up
listening,
before.
right, right. So
But
for the ones that are listening on YouTube and on X Spaces, we're going to be doing something that was totally unplanned here. So let's see what happens with these cards here.
yeah, it's just kind of,
As long as you don't say
and
that
I've got
one
to say, full
back from the
disclosure, everyone, I've never done this before, but this is just building up to so I'm going to pull my Osho Zen Tarot deck, which I use in my readings. Bring it in here. And I don't even know what for or what is coming, but the cards will tell.
as long as it's not my mother coming back from the
No, no,
dead.
this is no, no, it's not going to be a medium issue. It will be
Because she might have been upset that the tractor was on her grave to bury my father.
just tell her Seinfeld. You know,
It was so comical. It was so
that's very Seinfeld, I must say. You know, and it's great because now Bobby Kennedy's married to one of the Seinfeld characters. Yeah, for a long time.
yeah.
So
All right.
I'm,
So
I'm going to do a Celtic cross. So I'll describe it a bit because the the Celtic cross is a card here, a card over it, one up here, one down here, and this way and that way. And the first card at the center of the cross is the issue. The second, and this issue is what do we what do we need to understand about death and about the whole vibe of this here. And so that card is there. This card is what I call the key and the lock. both two sides of the same thing, the opening and the closing. The top card is how do we take this into the world that we live in? The 1/10 of awareness with 9/10 of it suppressed. And then the card below is the oceanic that we just swim on the surface of, the real depths of us, depths that go beyond even our individual illusions of being separate. This is the past and this is the future. So it's really about, okay, the issue is what do we, I will just start.
Right.
I will, I will shut my face and start. The issue is ordinariness. It is ordinarily as much as we live that we die. And this is like this farmer in nature, kind of in the British countryside. And the thing is that, oh, there's a card behind it. This, this is interesting. There's ordinariness. And then there is the source. I was talking about the source. It is ordinarily that we are always the source, living or dying. So let's move to what does that mean? More illumination from the world of the 1/10 consciousness, the horizontal world, the world where we are trying to get here from there, where we're trying to not do bad and be good, where we're constantly this, that. But the consciousness is like watching these cards. It's seeing this and that happening, but it's neither this nor that. The question then is existence. It's interesting. We're coming up with ordinariness, the source, existence. And so here's a person naked in a little like a fairy floating in the vastness of the sky, the universe, with no boundaries of windows or horizons in the way. Wherever she looks, it is the same infinite existence, and it shows us signs, the comet, signs of the oceanic. Yes, the issues of, wow, I've never had these two come together, but the life, where are my glasses in this? Life, the two cards that came up is the burden and stress. So these two.
The burden
Now,
and stress.
stress, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, in this one, there's a person, supercilious person here, overdressed and all, and we are the person carrying the log. This is what this is right here. It's a log, and this poor person is carrying them. And it's sort of the things that happen where there's big, important people in our worlds, but we carry the burden of them. So that's one way this is coming. Kind of the dramas of life in this regard, having to serve others that are exploiting us. And this is about trying to get it all together as a one-man band. And this guy's a one-man band. He's got everything, all the symbols and everything going. But this carnival actor has a wise old monkey who is just seeing the inevitable happening and is merely standing there with the needle, knowing full well that in the next instant, the needle is going to pop the balloon and the crash happens. So, so that is what, so that is what these two say, and what unites them, because this is about the crash. It has something to do with about the crash that happens at death. I mean, the crash that happened for me when my mother was and see, it can happen to many people. I've had hospice nurses tell me this. She when I finally was able to let her go, because she used to say, I said, I don't understand why I'm still here. I'm really ready to go. I've been ready to go for years. And I said, well, I know why you're here. I've had to reconcile that I can't let you go. And I've even tried to let you go. And when I tried, I almost gagged and fainted. And I said, this is really not me. So I had to accept this is so important with the process of dying, with our loved ones dying ourselves, how we think, well, should I not have done this or that? Should I have pulled the plug early or all that? Just love yourself and forgive yourself. It's not a, and that's for all of you out there that are listening that have had those kind of feelings. It's you do the best you can, and whatever happens in the death of our parents or loved ones is always an opportunity to accept and hug ourselves for our limitations and just say, hey, you're human. Just it happened the way it happened. You might have regrets, but it's over now. Move on to the
Well, do you
next.
think that the stress and the burden goes beyond the death, or do you think that
No, the
it's
stress and the burden is about life. It's the culmination of ending life in some ways. This is at least how this is expressing because the stress card and the burden card is, life is full of stress and burden. People exploiting us, we're trying to lift that log and go as far as we can. And then there's the other side of it where we're very active about life, defiant against it. We're going to be the one man band and everything's fine. And then the monkey's almost like the the death. He's in the guise of a monkey, and all he's doing is holding the needle, and then pop. All the stuff we're doing goes boom, 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 and it's all done. And so what happened for her was when I just had to accept that I had to accept myself as I was. Such is the case. I can't let go of my mother. I'm too attached to her. And then the other thing I started feeling when I accepted that is, well, maybe it's not time for her to go, and that whatever mysterious thing is helping me through her remaining will take care of itself now. And it did. A few months later, that feeling of attachment was there, and then the next moment, without any warning, it was not there. It was like, there it is. It was gone. So I immediately walked into her bedroom and I said to her, I got a message to tell you that all this me holding you here, holding you back from going, just last moment it ended, and you're free to go. I'm no longer holding on to you. And she kind of worked out that idea a little bit with the dementia, saying, well, okay, I'll just go to well, okay, we could just have me go to the home and everything will be fine, and I can leave you alone. No, 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 I said, not that, it's not that, that let go. I'm here to be your caregiver now. What you may live years or seconds is up to existence now. But all I'm saying is that I'm no longer the cause of you tarrying here on this planet in this mortal coil. It's gone. But I'm here as your caregiver all the way to the end. I'll be there here in this bedroom helping you go as we talked about it, helping you die and be released, which did happen. So anyway, she's kind of pondering on it, going, wow. Well, and then the deeper part of her that wasn't hit by the dementia of the Parkinson's dementia that she had. She suddenly went, well, what do you think will happen? And that was like the true depth of her talking to me. And I said, well, the deep, that question comes from the deep part of you. And my answer is this, that my feeling is that you will go very quickly. And what then happened a day and a half later is the crash, which was really like all the stuff that had happened, um, all the ups and downs. It was like it all happened in a 36-hour period where it was, I won't go into details, but it was like everything that had happened that was hard and the body going apart and all that all happened. I finally managed with some help to get her to her bed clean and put her back into the bed. And then I leaned close and said, Vipassana, that was her Sanskrit name. Breath meditation was her Sanskrit name that Osho gave her. Mine is Arjuna, meditation, innocence. I said, Vipassana, I think this is it. And I think you're going now. And she went, mm-hmm. I said, do you want us to continue to feed you water and food? And she said, no. And 6 days later, she worked at her letting go, and she died laughing and luminous. It was quite remarkable.
Well, that's a strange thing when you bring that up because there is a common theme about death where the body sort of knows, assuming it's not sudden, right? But it's,
Right,
because of some sort of
right.
lengthy illness, the body wants to stop eating and taking in food. It's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And for the ones that are trying to almost fight the process, the surviving family members or even medical staff, they intervene and they, put food in the body or put fluids in the body, and they're actually fighting the process.
Yeah.
And so there's this. See, with the medical industry now, we're gotten to the point where you can keep the body alive. It's not very, there's not dignity to it, but you can keep the body alive for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
100 years ago, you couldn't do that.
No.
But the thing is it really a dignified life or even, a dignified death? And that was where we were getting to with my father. It was like, we've taken it to the extreme and we can't go any further with this.
I mean, what I'm about to say about it is we're all learning. We learn through our mistakes, and mistakes are not really mistakes. They're just, this happened, maybe this could have happened. And the most important thing to understand is the path of being a human being is to is to think you've made mistakes and have made mistakes and all, but in the bigger picture of this all, it doesn't matter. I mean whether he should have left then or not. We do what's handed to us in our world as we understand things. People did different things in the past. People will do different things in the future. But um, the 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 problem is that the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. I can't remember the moment, the Latin of it. But the oath, we forget that Hippocrates lived in a time where death was common, and back in ancient Greece, where I mean, I remember Ray Bradbury said this to me once when he was lecturing and he was telling us. Um, that he was talking about how certain drugs had come in the 1920s and in the 1930s, but everybody's family had, almost, if you had a lot of kids, there was going to be a kid who dies or something like that, or people died suddenly. So death was always around. He wrote a short story about it and I think it's based on something he did in Illinois when he was a little boy, where he tried to bring back to life one of his siblings, and of course he got spanked. I mean that's the mistake that the father made. You're getting crazy and spanked him. But it's a short story that I think is quite autobiographical about his sister. I think it was his sister who died who was young, but we don't have these kind of experiences in the United States. I know my first encounter with death was not losing a little brother or an older sister or something from rheumatism or God knows what. It was the loss of a cherished pet. but it was very profound with the cherished pet, this cat I had, and when the cat, no, it was the dog I had. Sorry, that's another one. Um, and I remember I was so inconsolable. I was just sobbing and sobbing, and at one point, family was going off doing something else, and I laid in my bed, and I felt that I was going to die of a broken heart. I'd got to that point where I think I might be going. And then this golden light came out of the wall and hovered over my chest. So I think I was breaking my heart. And then it went into my chest. And the crying immediately ceased and never came back again. And then the golden light went off through the window. Some guardian angel, something. Because I was really crying. They would have found me dead. So it doesn't. It can be a cat. It could be. But it can trick you if it's some human. If it's a cat. But we were always around death so much more than we are in our modern times. So it has its own unique challenges. Now, in the middle of that, my hands were moving and pulling cards, and if we look at these two things about because this is a reading for all of us that I'm doing here. It's collective. It's about death. It's about what do we do with it. And there's a part at the active part of our trying to make things all happen, and then it's going to go pop. And there's the whole burden of carrying the life and the world and the expectations of others that are often supercilious. What then harmonizes these two cards is innocence. Here is Lao Tzu, the great Taoist master. He's lived quite a life. He has come full circle to, we are meant to lose childhood so that we can recover it with awareness. The child is turned into the ego, but then it's never lost. It's our very nature that some of us return full circle in life to our awakening, to the gift of mystery and beauty that we came in life and brought into this world, which is then embraced by others who did exactly the same. But in their embracing, they are trying with all good intention. You can't live in this beautiful, innocent person. You cannot live like this here. You're going to have to learn this. You're going to have to learn how to competition. You're going to have to learn how to shine it on with certain people. You have to learn all these things because you won't make it. And so it happens often that using the metaphor here, our parents, politicians, priests, and pedagogues who have now succumbed to the ego coding that they use to survive this innocence that's now suppressed, says, we've got this great game. And if you play it, my son or my daughter, we will love you and we'll take care of you. But you have to play this game and win it. Oh, what's that game? The game is pretend that you're not a divine spark. Okay, I'll do it. And children, innocent, they they are total in the way they play a game. So the divine spark. So he pretended not to be the divine spark, and he succeeded in the game. He forgot about the divine spark, and then he forgot it was a game. So really, the what I consider the second birth that Christ was talking about is when the enlightenment that we came with, that then was suppressed by ego and things, that we rediscover. If we rediscover it, you've not lost it. It is your very nature. And because it's your very nature, and because it's permeating everything, it is ordinary. It is the most ordinary thing. And that's why seeking God, seeking truth, all of these things that people do, becoming a Buddha, an awakened one, well, to the Buddhists, you cannot become a Buddha. You are a Buddha. The question is, why are you pretending not to be a Buddha? Who started you on that path of pretending not to be a Buddha? And and then if you go deep into witnessing how the pretenses habits started, what is witnessing it but the Buddha? How, you can only imagine that you've suppressed the spark of divine God light, but it's not possible to lose it because it is so ordinary. Look, I mean, God's presence is in everything in the world. The trees, the sky, and because it's so ubiquitous, and because you can't find it, because it's everywhere, it's all over the place, it's inside you, it's eternal, it's missed, completely missed, because the goal-oriented life, the life that does the one-man band, the life that complies to the surrender of being a beast of burden, all these things are tend to make us misplace our center, forget our center, and it even will start you trying to think, I've got to become a Buddha. I've got to become a spark of God. And so you'll spend life after life trying to become something. But you can't become these things. You are these things, living or dead. You are these things forever. So the question is, the work is about unraveling, it's about relaxing, it's about easily coming here to the present. And it doesn't matter what path you're on. I mean, what I'm talking about is meditation, about being a witness to things. And it's meditation is not a faith, it's not a religion, it's a hypothesis of subjective science. And whatever your path is, whether you're a theist path, atheist path, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Catholic, whatever your path is, meditation will make you more full and aware in that path. There have been great meditators in all the religions. Bar Shem Tov is one of the great Hasidic enlightened masters. There's Plotinus in the Christian faith. There's so many people in all the religious faiths. There are mystics who have come home to this. So, in whatever faith you're in, whatever your background, you can utilize it to come to exactly the same ubiquitous reality that is divine. And so, and the path that is innocence, in an in of sense that you rediscover. And see what Lao Tzu created the Tao Te Ching, which is the water course way. And what that means is his was about non-doing as the work. Water has this goal to come out of the mountaintops, and its whole nature is to go disappear into the oceanic. Now, a lot of things confront it. There's barriers, but the water doesn't fight the barriers. The water just waters. And as it builds and builds, it's not seeking a weak point in the barrier, but the weak point is found, and the water flows through and continues its journey to the ocean. So there is a certain workless work that is required, and it's there in all religions. Even in the case of Francis of Assisi, he's raking the field with a fellow monk, and the fellow monk uh, stopped raking and kind of held his rake on the post of his rake. He said, "Francis, what would you do if you knew that the world would end in a half an hour?" Francis just kept raking, raking, and then he looked up and stopped and said, I would just keep going on raking. There's some very depth. The message is in every religion. The message is there in every religion. Whatever your desire or need of religion to go, the same message is there. And it is about finding that which never is born and never, therefore never dies. It's about something that doesn't even exist, because even that is an impediment to, if you must exist, then you must also someday not exist. But what if consciousness, the eternal spark, is beyond even that? So what does the past, so innocence is the innocence is the source of this deathlessness. And these two extremes, one's more yang, this guy the monkey, and the other's more yin, with the burden. So what is this, how, with this stuff I'm talking about death, what does it do to our attention to the past? What then is illuminated in the past that we could bring as a lesson into this Celtic cross? Now, this is very strange. This card moved around. It's the card that started this, the past, ordinariness. That's never happened before. Remember, it's just ordinariness. It's just be here now, or be here now, or be here now. Same words, different thing. Be here now. Draw all of your energy and intelligence and love, all your fears and everything, like bring it to now and watch it. So now the future then, oh wow. The future for all of us. Remember, miracles happen. Life can even sprout from a dead rock. Courage. Have courage. Life is miraculous. Even if you feel yourself to be deader than dead rock, you are not.
I want to hear something really weird. So when my sister and I were debating about pulling the plug on my father, this is during this midnight discussion, right? And the doctor was talking about the perfusion issue with the low blood pressure. And because my sister is in transplants, so she knows all about, the importance of perfusion of organ systems. So she's having this argument with the doctor. And she goes, well, I've only seen two miracles happen where the perfusion was so low and there wasn't organ failure. And I remember being on this call, this FaceTime audio call, and I said to my sister, I've seen more than two miracles in my life, and I said it kind of like a joke, but I was serious too at the same time. She was just so bombastic with the doctor. I've only seen two miracles in my life. And it's like, and I just it was just knee-jerk reaction. I said to my sister that, I've seen more than two miracles in my life. And it's honest, you live long enough, you see these strange things that happen that you could put it in the category of miracle. So it's interesting you brought up miracle and courage. Another thing that I thought was a main theme to my eulogy for my father was fortitude. That his struggle, and he held on, and he just, even when everyone thought that he wasn't gonna go yet, he still held on and held on and held on. There was a fortitude, and that goes, I think his whole life was like that. And I think it goes back to even his ancestors had a very strong fortitude. So, and to have fortitude, you also have, when you're going through adversity, you have to have courage. So there's a coupling effect with fortitude and courage. So it's interesting that you're bringing up these cards that are rare cards that are popping up in this context. I feel as though I'm going through tumultuous times, John. I really do. And I was talking to my rabbi recently during Purim, and I told him about 3 weeks after Yom Kippur for this year, I've, there's been things that have been happening that just aren't going smoothly, that are over and beyond the normal course of a year. This is a bad year for me. All right, in a lot of different dimensions, but and I just feel when you pulled out that burden card and stress, the stress has not ended with my father. The stress, I'll tell you, the stress and the burden is just beginning. And I feel as though, I have several months to get through the other stresses that are, part of this year, the burden, and that it will abate, but it
It
just,
will.
but I'm going through it, and
Yeah, you're in the middle of it right now. But this too shall pass.
this year sucks. This year sucks for me.
Probably in your astrology, you're probably having some kind of a major return, or maybe a square of your Pluto by Pluto, or I don't know. But I mean, I had a year like that in 1992, and I could equate it to um, Pluto was transiting in the sky, and it was squaring for a very long time for the whole year. My natal Pluto, which is death and trans, death and resurrection kind of issues. And I almost didn't make it through that year. Um, and I was in prison because my first publisher had, who's since passed, so I talk about it. I won't mention his name, but he got me through the door with my initial best-selling book, Nostradamus and the Millennium, but he embezzled my royalties. And And so my agent and I were fighting a long time to get the royalties back. But what he was doing was he was producing books that looked like the first book that I had written. And they looked so much like it that I was getting letters from people saying, "Why is your first book so great and this new book is terrible?" And I went, "What do you mean?" And then I realized, I mean, don't you read the author's name? It's not my name, and I didn't write this. And so, what my agent once said to the person that was his go-between from the other side he says, you've really got this guy, John Hogue, coming and going. You've got this whole publishing house that's publishing books, Nostradamus books, and basically trying to crowd the market with them. And basically, he's got a whole publishing house that's working to destroy his career as a writer. So talk about injustice things. And then what also happened was that these people decided that I got a letter from them where they all signed it, everybody. And these were all disciples of Osho, and they all signed it. And they basically said the argument was by the publisher, it was also Sannyasins, is that we need this money, your royalty money, more than you do.
What?
I mean, and it's often happened in my life when some really terrible outrage has happened that it's so beyond the pale that you might want to just jump off a cliff or something like that. I mean, this happened in Pune. I was in this amazing group where I had these huge breakthroughs, but I was very soft and vulnerable. And then I sang Bonsoir by Debussy to the people at the end, and some people said, "Hey, there's a French night tonight. You ought to go to the French night for all the sannyasins. Every national identity would have a night where they could get up on stage and be silly and all. It was very Rabelesque, Rabelais kind of a thing. And so I walked in there, and I learned a good lesson that just to be trusting is not enough. You have to be watchful. That if I had known what I was doing, I was walking into a lion den, but I was saying, well, I'm so open, I'm so soft now from this thing that happened to me, real life changing. So I got up on the stage and I started singing Bonsoir, et lorsque sous les couchants, les rivières sont roses, un condier des frissons que c'est le champ de blé. And they're all like, all of them, most of them drunk, and they're all like, nah, no, sing the that, And it was a good karmic moment because I had been a opera singer professionally and all, and I really bombed. I have never bombed. I bombed. And what happened was there was a later really good friend. She didn't even remember what she did because what she was doing for her stage fright, she was drinking an entire bottle of scotch and she was playing the character of the concierge. And if it's like when you put the hook in the gong show and pull the person off, well, she would brush with her broom your feet and brush you off the stage. But she'd had too much, too much alcohol. And what she did, she took one look at me and took the broom and rammed it right into my private parts on stage to where I doubled over, and I managed somehow, and everybody's cheering. It was like all these drunk people, they were all like cheering, thought it was wonderful. And I staggered into the room, the green room behind the stage, and collapsed. And I'm lying there collapsed. Sometimes as men will know, if somebody really gives you a kick in the private parts, it can knock you out. And so I'm laying there, but I'm aware that two people are literally standing over me, completely like I'm just trash on the floor. And the lady that brought me is being given the riot act by the head of the general director, saying, "Don't bring people like that here. You shouldn't have brought him." She's not wrong. He's not wrong. And she, yeah, yeah, I was probably wrong. I shouldn't have brought him. I felt like I was just a piece of meat. That there was no humanity in it. So this was my ultimate outrage, other than the one I just talked about earlier, where I picked myself up, staggered out of there, and I was walking down the street towards the Burning Ghat Road where I lived in India, and away from the ashram. And I literally was saying, well, there's two possibilities after what has happened. I have been I have been violated, but I also stepped into it. I didn't have the words then yet, but it wasn't just enough to say I was violated. I was violated, but I was. It's not enough to just be soft and wonderful and spiritual. You've got to be a little awake. I if I had gone to that place now feeling all blissful, I would take one look in one of the audience and say, "I think I'll pass." And not get into this thing. So I had my part in it. But so I was just there measuring two things. One was, well, what could I do after this? Well, I could just go jump in the Muller River and disappear. Here I am in India, away from home, all of this happened. Or I could just have a big laugh and go home and go to bed. So I had a big laugh and walked home and went to bed. In the same way, in a similar thing, I'm reading this letter with these people. And they're basically disowning my value and just making this pathetic thing where they're going to take the money after he'd embezzled it also. And I just looked at it and I said, okay, folded it up. I was going to go run 4 miles around the track in Bellevue, Washington. So I just went off and ran a mile. It's just like, it was like so terribly unjust that it just disappeared. It just was not worth even holding on to. Um, it just next moment it was gone.
Interesting.
So,
Well,
yeah.
there's a
So,
lot of people out there that try to, take advantage of people, and they,
of course.
they game the system, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
It,
All these my stories are this.
man, it's the burden.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
for sure, for sure.
yeah. So but I got to say something also on top of that so that people understand that, because people might be thinking, oh well, this is Osho's ashram and the people there are terrible and all that. No, you're wrong. What happens in an ashram, the spiritual community of this kind, is where, like Osho used to talk about, that I, I attract all kinds of people to interact with each other, all at very different stages of unawareness and awareness. And it's important in such a community. It's not just a community that you create to live in, it's a community where constantly you're being um, triggered and exposed to your conditioning. Now, Osho used to say if you have a problem with somebody, don't shriek at each other, and go count to 10. Don't talk about it, tell go in go do dynamic meditation and throw it all out, but never dump it on other people. Because what if you're going to dump your stuff on other people, they're not going to behave like Buddhas and and not dump back, and it just creates more negativity. It was a big thing that a lot of sannyasins never got, and disciples of Osho and the Sangha in our community, is that always, you must let it out, by the way. You must have a space where you can throw all this shit out. Um, but it should be done in private or done in a group where everybody's in their space, in the dynamic meditation, doing that, which we did every morning. And, that was a meditation that would start at 6. And you would start with irregular hyperventilation breathing to this music, bongo music. And what it would do is it would build up all this energy in your hara, in your belly, your life force area. And then the second 10 minutes would be this wild, amazing music, which you could just carry off, and it's catharsis. All that energy, you can laugh, scream, cry, roll on the floor, beat a pillow, whatever. You don't hurt anybody else, but in your own space, you're totally permitted to get as mad as you want to be, and as sad as you want to be, or as outrageously hilarious as you want to be. And that's very, very important in the spiritual surgery, for people to have a place to let it all out, because, society keeps it all in. And I tell you, it's why, if everybody did dynamic meditation for 21 days all over the planet, wars would cease to happen. Because wars happen because people aren't allowed to be like a child and be really angry and stuff. He was, no, no, son, don't do that. It's bad. And then not given the space to let that all go out. And so many diseases and problems in the world, if people did dynamic meditation, would disappear, because these energies need expression. You just don't need to hurt others by expressing it. You can beat a pillow. I used to do the anger meditation all the time, where I beat a pillow. And Osho used to say, you know, at first you're going to feel really silly because you're not feeling angry, but just go through the act. Just keep beating one pillow with another pillow and just wait. You just wait. And then what happened was, as I'm beating, I'm feeling like a real idiot. I'm going, when I'm not feeling angry or anything. And suddenly, one beat, and then the next beat, there was this huge fire in my belly. And suddenly I was going, ah. So it's there, and it needs expression. And when it's expressed, um, it it helps you to relax into your being, into your and forgive yourself and all that. It's That's at least my experience. So the situation that happened to me on French night was was as much my doing as it was theirs. And it is. I will speak more. I'm sure that's shocking a lot of people out there, but it's we'll talk more about this, or if you read my blogs and things, I will express more about these things.
Well, let me just remind the audience that I have the link for John's website in the description box. So please click the link and it'll take you to his website. Get his periodical and his readings. He does the card draw that you just saw. But I think we've all kind of like learned a little bit of this process, the death process, I guess.
Mm,
Everyone has to go through something similar
mm.
sometime in their life. I'm in a really strange space. I don't know. Don didn't ask to get the mic. I don't know if Don wants to say anything. I did miss one question, and that individual left the X Spaces. But if anyone has a question, please join X Spaces or type your question in the chat, and I'll ask John. But as we're waiting for someone to ask a question, John, you want to go over what a periodical is and what you do with the readings?
Yeah, I have well, I'm first off an author of 52 books and 22 languages and on prophetic traditions of the world. And if you go to my Amazon page and just click on the author link, you'll get to see a lot of them there. And I also have written thousands of essays and I've done a lot of media um, all across four continents. Probably the most media of any prophecy specialist in history, I'm surprised to say. Um, and talk to hundreds of millions of people in different media levels. But what I also have is a Hogue Prophecy Report. That is a PDF file that I send by via your email after you purchase a 1 year $60 or do an automatic payment for $5 a month. It's still 60, but for those who just want a more easy currency flow and not all at once, you have both options. And you can also send it as a snail mail to me. And all the information is there at hogueprophecy.com. That's where I have the free samples. I have a new, fresh Hogue Prophecy bulletin of 7 articles that has one complete article and excerpts of the other 6 at hogueprophecy.com. It's HOGUEPROPHECY.com. And the so that then I also do readings. This was an unusual situation doing a reading in the show here, but what I do is one-on-one readings with you. They can last up to 2 hours. And so if you're interested in that, go to hogueprophecy.com and you'll see at the very top in red readings with John Hogue. And then click on that link, that email link, and put in the subject line Hogue reading or reading. And in all the thousands of emails I get every day, I will see those. And then I will get immediately back to you as soon as I see it. And I will give you the information. I mean, as you see, one thing we start with in the reading is using an astro.com a free copy of your astrology, either as a birth astrology chart or as a composite. I mean, not a composite, but a transit chart. And so we look at the Kelly Blue Book of your body, mind, vehicle, its strengths, its weaknesses, its potential way it will drive down the road of your life. And then we go deeper with the cards. And what will often happen in the cards is that we will go, if sometimes it doesn't need to happen, but it happens where the Celtic cross has one card where it's telling me, take this card out of this Celtic cross and do a whole reading on it. And it has this process that, if it's necessary, goes very, very deep using the cards. It's quite remarkable. I've never understood how this mystery works with cards just starting to do what they do. But then again, I would not want to have the experience that Aesop's fables had with the centipede, where he stumbled upon walk near in the path of a very philosophical frog who asked him, Mr. Centipede, how do you manage to walk on 50 legs on either side of your body? You know what? I've never thought of that. Oh, let's see. First leg, and he fell over and he couldn't get up. And the frog says, "So you frog, you've ruined my life. Now I'll always be thinking about it, and I'm supposed to just do it, not think about it." And the frog said, "Well, I can't do anything. I'm just a poor frog. I just asked the question." And finally, what happened is the centipede was so embarrassed that the centipede ran home, got up and ran home. So he forgot about all that. A lot of things are it's like Yoda says, don't try, do or do not. There is no try. Anyway,
The Amber had a question. She asked a question before, but this is an interesting question. I'd like to get your perspective on this. John, do you believe you can see your own death or others and prevent that from happening?
or others, I
Wait,
don't quite understand.
John, do you believe you can see your own death or others and prevent that from happening? So could you see your own death or
You
other
can see
individuals,
your own death.
and
You
should
can
you or can you prevent it from happening?
you can see your own death. You can see the death of others happening, but don't go Darth Plagueis on us. In the Star Wars thing, you remember the scene where Anakin is with Palpatine, and oh, there was Darth Plagueis. He had many great powers, including the ability to prevent people from dying. Death is a part of life. You cannot be alive without it. So you can help, you can illuminate, but you cannot barge in and make things happen. Otherwise, you end up like Anakin and Darth Vader. It's not a it's I mean the Amber's question is really open-ended. I mean, certainly you can prevent people from dying if you eat well and do things that help your body and your soul and your awareness, your mentality be okay. You can you can see a danger of death, but one thing my teacher cautioned me, Osho, who initiated me into this work, is that never one of the biggest ego trips of people in prophecy is, well, some guy will come up and I actually saw this happen. The guy was really talented, but he was in his ego about it. So, and he come up to this person and said, "You're going to die in a year." And I was aware quietly in my own feeling that that person was going to die in a year. But that's not what you never say, "This will happen." It's always possible. Things can change in the moment. Decisions can change things. Uh, the future is not written in stone. Only egos try to turn it into stone. So, so be available, um, but only if people are open to you. Don't like walk up and force yourself upon them, even if you think it's for their own good.
From a medical standpoint, you look at probabilities of patients. They have a certain disease state or a certain lifestyle, and the probability of a certain path that they
Mm.
may go down. So if you catch the disease, let's say heart disease, and early, you can push them towards a healthier lifestyle and therefore reduce the chances of some sort of cardiac issue. So you can prevent potentially the death of an individual in that case.
Yeah.
But if you, what I have experienced with this, when it's like a dream or a premonition, you can't stop it. It's as if it is. This is a very deep subject here. We definitely don't have the time to really dive into it. But the thing is that how much of life is our will,
Mm.
really our will, free will,
Mhm.
versus it's already preordained, but we think it's free will. So there's this, if the Godhead looks at the loaf of time, right? Okay, so space and time is one big loaf, and you can slice it, and that's every second or every millisecond of our life as it goes by. But the Godhead sees the whole thing from beginning to end. So it's already ordained. But yet, at the individual slice in a four-dimensional creature like us, we're three spatial dimensions of time. We don't know the actual future. We can project and have, set probabilities for it, but we, as a creature of the four dimensions, don't really know the future. We know our history sometimes, but in theory, we know our history, but we don't know our future. But the Godhead does know the past and the future because it's already there. Because the Godhead supersedes time and space. They see the whole thing. So, my take on this is that if there's a premonition, not not a clinical evaluation of a patient, but just a premonition, usually in some sort of dream state, I don't think you can stop it. I think you're basically you're somehow in some strange way in a dream state. You have a glimpse of that fifth dimensional view
Hmm.
of the loaf of time and space. So that's my take on it. It's just that a big part of this is that it's already ordained, and all you can
It's
do is warn, but you can't prevent.
You can warn or simply take note and move on, live your life. I mean, I think it can help a lot if you realize that if you discover something in you that never is born and never dies. That's the best I can hint with words because it's bigger. The part of words cannot experience the whole of it. And there's even a situation that's beyond fifth dimensional. Seventh dimensional is where the Akashic records were created. That is this idea where everything that has happened is happening. Everything that has been in the past is happening. Everything in the future is happening. Everything in the present is happening at once. All the things that we thought or felt, all the things that we will think and feel as other forms and things, and all the universes that once existed and will exist again, are all already recorded before and after they happened in this present, the seventh dimensional state. Nostradamus even talked about it because he was basically a channeler. He basically channeled, like Solomon, he channeled the astral Denzians, like Solomon. He had the Book of Solomon. He worked the magic of that. He also at higher planes until the seventh plane. We said that's the Godhead, and then he tried torturously in his prose to describe it, but it basically was describing to me what I got out of it is that this ever now state, ever now, and if you have a glimpse at it, you'll see every birth and every death. But again, the thing that can glimpse it is neither born or dies. So, a lot of times people are trying to alter and forestall death is an idea of losing their ego identity more than losing their soul. It's egocentricness. Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. All right.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. If the future is not malleable, then why have prophecy? So if we have this,
Well, that's
if,
a very good question. And the point is, the true message of prophecy is to erase prophecy. That's absolutely my fundamental sadhana, spiritual practice in the world, in the outer world. My, I am anti-prophetic. as anti-prophetic as Osho was anti-sex, even though he was called the sex guru, because he actually embraced the tantric path, which rather than suppress sexuality, you need to start with your sexuality. But he constantly reminds us, don't stay at the threshold. Don't use this as an excuse to stay in sex. From sex to super consciousness. And he used to say, because in India he got a lot of hell from it, from brahmacharyas and brahmins and all, when he started to even mention the word sex in the 1960s. It shocked Indian society. He had 15,000, 50,000 people coming in Bombay to hear his series From Sex to Super Consciousness, but it always led from let's just admit it, we got to start with our life force that creates life, that's sexuality. It can also create art, it can create other things, and then you move into super consciousness, which um, it's so in my own that's a tantric way, and what I'm doing is a tantric way too with the future. I don't suppress your interest in the future. I don't suppress my own interest in the future. Because in one way, the future that we're seeing is a projection of the past. We keep projecting the past into our future and calling it the future. Otherwise, why is it that it repeats so much? You change the names of your religions, the costumes you wear, everything keeps changing. But the lesson I've learned from history is that the past is trying so hard to project itself on the empty possibility screen of the future. And the only way you can really experience the future is when you live completely in this moment. Then it's constantly coming in as a new possibility. And it gives you then an ability to live with the intelligence of spontaneity without thinking or controlling. You just do what must be done in that moment. The so my work is to absolutely destroy this in people. My work is to, as an anti-futurist, is to take you, like the tantric path, completely into your interest of the future. Because if you go deep into it, you'll discover it's the past being repeated. And what I do in my books and my writings, and even now, is I take you all the way in, but ultimately, my books and my writings and what I do in my sadhana is taking you back to the eternity of the present. It's the only existence that is real. Everything else is transitory. It never born, it's never died. It's what you bring, what we all bring as a gift into this world. It gets put into a coat of ego and time and mind and goals. And there's nothing wrong with those things. Just you know, your body mind vehicle is a car, like a car that you drive down the life road. But between the ages of 7 and 14, the society makes you forget that you're a driver. The soul is not driving your car, you are the car. And that's the big problem, where most people are living their life as the car and forgotten the one who drives it. It has to be remembered.
Well, I think, John, that it's now 12:20. Um, it's
Time to go to bed.
time to go to bed. But it's just the last few days, I just haven't had that much sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, that the day before that night before the burial, right? I just I only had like about an hour and like 40 minutes of sleep before I got onto a plane to fly to Detroit, and then but it's so I'm glad it's over, but it still feels weird. Still feels that.
It will feel weird. I felt weird for a few months. Like I was saying, I felt like my mother was like my closest friend, fellow traveler. And I didn't even think I would survive her death. it was that deep, but we talked about it, her and I, a lot. And then I thought, if I don't survive your death, I said to her, that would be really dumb. It would really be an incredible waste of this beautiful life that I've been given. And then she said, yeah, it would be. And anyway, it'll be wonderful. You'll be able to dive deep into the freedom of aloneness. And I said, yeah, that's something really wonderful that's going to come after the initial shock and other issues, a new life, and a new life with the freedom of simply being aloneness, which is what everyone is. Therefore, and the whole existence and all of its elements are alone together. So it's a paradox. You're not alone. You're all alone together. So are you alone, really?
Well, I just want to remind the audience in the description of this video and all my videos, this is part 31. The links to John's website are there. Just click the link. It'll take you to his website. You can sign up for the periodical. You can do a reading, sign up for a reading. Again, you can purchase his mini books, 52 books, I think you said.
Hmm?
You have 52 books that are published now?
52 books, yes.
So, purchase the books also. Help support John. I mean, he's gracious to do this show with me, and please help support him the best way you can. But thank you for the questions that people have typed into the chat. I apologize for missing the request that that popped up on X Spaces while I was talking about what happened to my father. But thank you again, John, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thank everybody for listening to us. This was a very special show.
It was definitely a different format. It was a bit chaotic, but it was definitely a different format, and it was
A
good.
lot of very valuable things were passed.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate the talk, John. So say goodbye to everybody, and then I'll shut down the show here.
Goodbye, everyone. I
All right.
love you.
Thank you everybody for listening on X Spaces and also watching the show live on YouTube. So let me shut it down here. Hold on, John.